Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Ray, and I'll be your host, taking questions and presenting them to our guest, co-owner and founder of Toshu Knife Arts, uh, Ivan Gomez Fonseca. Hey Ivan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just for everyone watching, we're trying a new format, so we hope to do more like this. So we apologize if we have any technical issues. So let's jump into this. We're here to talk about NSK Diamond Stones. This is a new product we introduced a couple of months ago, and unlike any other stone on the market, uh, Ivan's curated this selection. Their performance is unlike anything on the market. However, this product may not be for everyone depending on your experience. We'll be releasing an in-depth video of NSK Diamond Stones in the future, a bit more about the discovery and the history. But for now, and for anyone who doesn't know what they are, Ivan, can you give us a brief description of what NSK Diamond Stones are?
Yeah, so I think what it is for me um, is a complete system. They're diamond stones that have a really wide variety of applications for different types of steel, different hardnesses of steel, whether it's carbon, stainless, powdered steel. And it really kind of opens the door up to a lot of different possibilities in sharpening. I mean, I know for me specifically, I work a lot with honyaki and other types of um, steels that need a lot of precision work. So and a lot of polishing. I do quite a lot of polishing. So the diamond stones kind of help me to really navigate where I'm going when I'm polishing without really having to guess so much with grit ranges or the accuracy of a grit range in a stone. So yeah, for me, they really changed a lot of how I do things and how I think about and approach what I'm doing.
Hmm. Would you be able to give us a brief history on how you came across these stones?
So I've been using, I came across them actually a long time ago, probably in about 2010 or 11. And at that time, NSK had one line of stone, which is Kyokoha. Uh, and I had used them at that time. But that time, to be honest, the stone that stone wasn't for me. It was an excellent stone. It it did what it was supposed to do. And about 3, 4, 5 years ago, I started researching again, looking at other different diamond stones. I've also tried every stone that I can find that's on the market, but that's also kind of stones that you don't find outside of Japan. So um, then I came back to NSK because I had saw a new line called Hakuto, and inside that line, there's a lot of variations, whether it's hardness, softness, interesting grit numbers. So
Mhm.
I came back to it, and then after coming back to it and realizing, well, wow, this is very unique. This is very different. This can actually bridge all the gaps I was currently felt I was missing, but also bridge that gap, which is a difficult one, from synthetic stones to jump into natural stones.
Right.
So the NSK stones kind of they provided that easy transition, and that's just for polishing. But what they can actually do for an edge is quite unique as well. So that's kind of how I came across it, and also there's a lot of woodworkers in Japan, from Kezurokai to professional woodworkers, that were using NSK and actually using every grit range and have like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 stones. So I
Mhm.
was really intrigued by that. And why are these guys using it? Like, why are some of them using only NSK and at some time, and in some cases, not using any natural stones? So it was really intriguing. So we contacted them and started working with them, and then just went right into it.
Right, right. That's amazing. Tell me about the makeup of these stones. Because I think that's kind of the big question on a lot of people's mind, because it's synthetic. It's it's not natural. I know it's a bit complex.
Yeah,
What's the best way to kind of explain it?
I think they're obviously diamond stone, but it's a diamond stone that is very accurate to its stated grit. So, for example, in the past, when I've tried other diamond stones from different companies, I've always had this problem with, okay, I'm trying out, say, a 400, but I'm seeing scratches that are definitely 120 or 220 or 320, right? So what I found the most unique thing about it is that I knew that when I'm using it and talking to the maker, and show it and seeing how he made them and his approach, that wow, okay, I'm confident. I know, okay, I'm using 400, that's 400. I'm using this, it's that, right? So,
Right.
and also within the grit ranges, and there's a lot of different stones. Like there's Hakto, there's Kyokuha. Kyokuha's, I find it's a bit soft for me, but I find that for just daily, regular use, if somebody really wants to get into diamond stones and start experiencing what they can do, it's a great starting point. Then there's a Hakto, which is broken into 3 series, so Hakto 1, 2, and 3. But then within that, there's also Hakto S or Hakto 2S, right? So it goes softer, harder. It can be harder, softer, softer, right? So then you have another line called Oboro that is really, really meant for kanna and woodworking tools. They're slightly harder, feel very much like, one thing I can compare it to is they have this feeling similar to a hard Nakayama.
Okay.
Or
Now,
Asagi or some, yeah.
Now, within all of these different series hardnesses, who are these stones for? Can anybody pick these up,
Yeah.
or would you, is there anything specific? Is this
I would
for
say the stones are
novices, for advanced?
I would say that the stones, depending on which series you take, are for everybody to use. Anyone can use them. Like I was saying before, the Kyokuha is a very easy stone to pick up, use. It's slightly softer, so it feels more like a traditional synthetic stone that everyone would be used to. Of course, the price is always a factor, but the amount of abrasive that you get per stone is very generous. So that I think that the amount of diamond abrasive you get on the stone really speaks for itself. It speaks for these stones and speaks for what the maker is trying to do. So I do think they're for everybody. I feel that they shine for professionals, though. I really feel that professionals, whether you're a professional sharpener, a woodworker, or your knife maker, right? I think once you start getting into it and understanding the system, and kind of, you can really, really fine tune a progression for your work.
Right.
So I've done that for myself, and I pick and choose different things for whether it's a Tamahagane honyaki or a Hitachi steel honyaki or a Sanmai carbon steel, or whatever it is, you can pick and choose, and you can create these very, very unique progressions for yourself.
Very cool. Let's jump into some of the questions here. We got a collection of questions that were submitted, and so we're just going to kind of dive in and let's see what we got. And I'm sure you may have touched on a little bit of this, but let's just see how it goes. So the first question we have here is, how does the flattening / surface conditioning process impact the cutting attributes of the stone?
So that's actually a great question, because it is very specific to each stone. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but let me try to explain this by showing you guys, because it really makes a difference. So when I'm using the stones come with they're flatteners. There's these rectangle flatteners, and also this circular flattener. One is, and the rectangle flatteners come in very different grits. So you can see here, 200, 600. I think they go up to this one here, which is 3,000. And it's not that you need to specifically match the flattener to the stone, but it helps in a lot of different ways. So how I kind of approach flattening them is, let's grab a 400 here. So I got a 400S here. So I'll usually start off with a 150 or a 200 flattener. And I do a regular, just to get the flatness. One very important thing I tend to do with the stones is I always very much round the corners all across the stone. So kind of really round them because it gives a great surface area. Whoa. Gives a great surface area. So I got to keep all these up or else I'm not getting my walls dirty. Let me take this one too. But yeah, it gives a great surface area.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, the surface, you can actually enhance the surface. And I think the questions you're asking is, how do you do that? And there's a few ways. In the NSK, each stone contains these little wafers. If you can see these on camera. These can help to refresh the stone during use. So they're not meant to flatten, but they're meant to refresh the stone. And the other thing I do too, which I've talked to the NSK maker, and is I use these very hard, and these will be available at Tosho, I think next week actually. But I use these very hard 120, I think they're 120 grit stones to do what's called a metate, that means to refresh, refinish, or reset the surface of the stone. Mm-hmm. So for the rougher grit stones like 200, 400, and 800, I do these long passes, and I do cross patches, sometimes round. And what we're doing is we're kind of resetting the surface of the stone so that you get the kind of optimal use of it. And you can kind of feel that kind of grip right across the stone. For the higher grit stones, it's very similar. So if we take let's take a 3K. For the 3K though, it's very different because you want to feel the grit. You want to feel the 3K grit range and the smoothness of the stone. So that's where something like this 1K flattener comes in really handy, because the stones do wear slowly, mm-hmm. And you can check them. Just giving them a light resurfacing, kind of before, after sharpening, is kind of all you need. And again, I always round all of the corners of the stones. But this is a 1K stone, so then what I do, just to kind of get the maximum feel of the stone, I'll use, and you can definitely go with the 1K and just start. But sometimes for polishing onyaki, I'll finish it with this 3K.
Mm. So I think the next question coming in actually might just kind of tie into everything right now.
Yeah.
How do you shape the surface of the stone for different tasks? And how does this differ from synthetic or natural surface shaping?
For synthetic stones, Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much the same type of shaping all across, but I find the diamond stones and natural stones, for me, for polishing, not so much for if you're just doing edge sharpening, but for polishing, I find the corners need to be very rounded, and those corners need to also be polished. So what I mean by that is with this 3K, I'll I don't just round the corners with the 1K. I also polish them with the 3K. So I'm actually like polishing it like this. And
Mhm.
one advantage that that gives is that similar to natural stones, because these are hard to a degree, depending on which series you're working with, they will you can sometimes get cross contamination from other grits if your workstation is not really pristine. And keeping those round corners rounded and just the surface area you can reach when you're sharpening is just really important to keep those corners rounded.
Mm.
And I do that across everything, but it's more so for diamond stones and natural stones that I
Well,
do that. But
and
yeah,
actually,
I
this
mean, there
may
is
tie
one.
in. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Go on. Go on.
yeah. There's something that we haven't introduced yet, but we'll be doing very soon. And that's something I've found that works really well with the stones is we've started making these diamond. I guess you'd call it an agura, but I don't know if you can see that. But we've got like all types of grits for every stone, and they're pure diamond abrasive that exactly match every single stone.
Right.
So this really enhances the sharpening experience, and you can take it even further or pinpoint even further what you're doing.
So, sorry, I was going to say something else, but let's just jump to a different question.
Sure.
Another question submitted here was, how do NSK stones compare to synthetics and JNATs in edge and micro bevel sharpening? Can NSK stones effectively replace synthetics and JNATs in this?
Yeah, actually they can. And what I was kind of alluded to before is that in Japan, the woodworkers that are using them have completely replaced both traditional synthetic stones and Japanese natural stones with these NSK stones. And often what I found, and I think a few other people found the same thing, is that because the accuracy of the grit when you're working with say 400 or 800, 1500, the finish tends to feel almost a few grits higher. So a 400 could feel like a 1000, or it could even appear to feel like a 2000 or a 3000. So I think in that sense, for edge sharpening, they're quite unique in what they can do to the edge. And I'm not sure if it's the hardness or the diamond abrasive shape, but it gives a very unique, uniform edge formation. And
Right.
the apex is quite different feeling than other synthetic stones. Also, because the stones it's very they keep their flatness during sharpening. Then you don't lose the geometry of the stone, which impacts the edge, right? That you're working on. So the accuracy of that bevel is very consistent and clean. So that adds so much more to the sharpness that you can achieve, right? So yeah, I
Would you
think
say like the working surface then it's very consistent?
yeah, extremely consistent. And if you maintain it and watch it and maintain it well, it's extremely consistent. You don't sometimes like I can go through doing I have done like doing just only edge sharpening on basket sharpening just on the edge. I've done 60, 70 blades without having to flatten the stone. So that, and I do check them constantly out of habit. I don't know what it is, but I check the stones constantly to make sure that they are flat. And it makes a big difference. Yeah. That consistency that the stone has is it changes so much when you're sharpening. For natural stones, it's interesting because when you jump into the higher grit stones of NSK in the Hakto series, especially some of the slightly softer ones like the Hakto 2S or Hakto 1S, the 3000 and 6000 are great stepping stones to a natural stone. And it just because they're so consistent in the grit, and you can really see that it's so easy to transition. Like I've tested it. Okay, I can go from a 3K straight to Ohira or Uchigamori, or I can go from a 1500 to a Chunagura or a mid-range natural stone. So can they replace natural stones? I think for some people that are professionals, especially woodworkers that we've talked to, that the higher grit stones, so the 10K and 12K, for them can replace it just because natural stones in that consistency and in that grit range, and depending on what type it is, are extremely expensive, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and very rare to find something. So in that sense, yes. Can they replace them all across the board? I don't think so, because there's definitely aesthetic characteristics that natural stones create when you're polishing that I don't see that anything can replace that currently. And,
right.
And it's a beautiful feeling to use natural stones too. So I don't really want to replace them, right? So
right. Let's see. Next question in is: are NSKs to be used with mud? Can slurry be beneficial?
Yes, I do feel there is a time for a slurry and there's a time when you don't need it. In the lower grit stones, I don't feel you need any slurry. There are some ideas that I've had about bringing in making a Nagura for the lower grit stones, or 200 and also 400, but that's more to enhance the cutting speed to make it but do you need the mud? No, I don't think so. But
that would be just your personal preference, right?
That's my personal preference. Right. Yeah. When you get up past 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 4, 6, we keep going up there. I have found that a mud on the harder stones, so like Hakto 1 and Hakto 2, I find that a mud, that is a mud created from the exact same stone material, is beneficial, but it's got to be from the same stone. Right. Otherwise, you're introducing a foreign particles that are completely different and different size, different shape, and you're going to get different results. You can get scratching, you can get all these different problems. So yes, I do think it's beneficial in the higher grit stones to have a mud, and that's why we started working with these Nagura to actually do that.
So can you create a 3,000 mud with a 3,000 flattener?
Yes, you can. Okay. Yes, you can. I think that especially like this 3K is a Hakto material, so you can do that.
Okay.
The reason why we made these is because these are really for flattening. They're not for creating mud. So there's no reason to wear this out just to create mud, right? So hopefully we'll have these available soon, but like all you need is this little guy to resurface and refresh the stone, create some slurry, right? So you can. I don't think it's so necessary because the stones do cut quite fast. But sometimes to get this, sometimes with some diamond stones, depending how hard they are, you can get stepping or a different type of surface that's not as smooth as you want. So I find that the having a little bit of mud on there helps to be able to soften what you're working on. So soften a bevel or soften flat of a Yanagiba, or so it is beneficial.
Awesome. Next question. When do you when do you know that it's time to flatten the stone?
So this is really interesting. I find when you're used to working on, so for years I've always worked with Chaucera stones because I just really like how they feel. They cut fast. They create a beautiful edge, and they're really nice to work with. But I've found myself flattening them every 2 minutes sometimes. And sometimes I'm flattening them more than I'm actually sharpening. So with the diamond stones, I feel you kind of have to, like I'm sharpening every day, so I got into this habit of always thinking I've got to sharpen. But actually with the diamond stones, you kind of have to forget that. And sometimes you'll see a buildup on the stone that looks like it needs to be flattened, but actually it just needs to be refreshed.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean? So after you refresh it and you check the stone and also rotate your stone, right? So sharpening one way, rotate it, keep on going, right? So you're using the entire surface of the stone. I found that you don't need to flatten as much as you think you do. And also, depending on your pressure and how you're using your technique is a big deal when it comes to any sharpening on any stone. So how often do you need to flatten them? That I'm not sure, but I mean, it's different for every job that you're doing. But
sure. Would you?
I mean, you can check, but yeah, it's. I find it's definitely not as much as you do. Sometimes 50% as less than I would normally do.
That's
yeah.
interesting.
Sometimes with some stones.
That's very, because that kind of ties into another question that's submitted, and I guess it's a bit of a general question, but how long do these stones last compared to traditional and synthetic stones? Like, and you're saying 50% less.
I mean,
but that
I think that differs on the kind of work you're doing. Okay. I mean, for a professional, that's really hard to say.
Okay.
Like for the higher grit stones, I can see quite a long time. And the amount of abrasive you do get is quite a bit, like 3.5 to 4 millimeters. So it is a generous amount of stone you get. But it really does depend on the work you're doing. If you're doing only edge sharpening, I can see them lasting years actually. But once you start doing heavy work, like resurfacing like entire blades like this Honyaki, reshaping every surface, that's very different. That takes another toll, a very different wear on stones. So the stones do, yes, cut much faster. They do wear much slower, but like any rough stone, like they wear. And there are very, very hard rough stones, and there are softer rough stones. So depending which one you choose and the type of work you're doing, they're going to wear respectively to that work. But they do cut faster and they do wear much slower. So I know that's kind of not really giving an accurate answer, but it's a hard one. It's a hard one. I think the lower grit stones, 200 to 400, 800, definitely do. If you're doing full blade sharpening, whether it's like on these, whether it's you're working on the Kiriha or like this one, you're working on the entire blade surface, you're going to get wear, but it's going to be a lot less than regular stones. For example, like a Chaucera 400 stone, I can go through a brand new 400 stone in 3 months.
Okay.
Where a 200, and I usually start quite low on the progression. So a 200 stone like this one, I can go starting with the 200 stone. It's like at least 5 to 6 months for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a lot of sharpening, not like sometimes 10 hours a day. So that's why it's a hard question to answer.
No, for sure. Understood. So we have another question here. It's a little bit broad, so I'm just going to kind of slightly alter it and try to understand what we're looking at here. The question was, if you could only choose one hardness or line or series to suit a wide variety of steels and constructions, what would it be? So maybe this question might be more about how you see each series and maybe who it's for, or I don't know how we can kind of differentiate the different series,
Yeah.
and maybe who should be looking at it. Someone more experienced versus someone who just wants to, get a set that they're going to just use for sharpening and want that set around for a while.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, just because there's just so many different people using them for completely different jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just for edge sharpening, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all you want to do, is just
Let's start
maintain
there.
your edge.
Yeah.
If you just want to maintain the edge, I'd say an 800 or 1500 Hokuto 1,
Okay.
or the Kyokuha 1000 is a great place to start.
Okay.
And this is very similar to I think any synthetic stone or any diamond stone. Is just that 1000 grit range is a good place to start. And that's just for edge sharpening, to maintain,
Okay.
That's one group, right? Of
Right.
users.
So let's just say if you're going to do, more like heavier work, or even like, your self polishing, where would you direct people to?
Then for me, I would definitely start with, I tend to always want to start much lower, because I find it actually, it makes the work faster, and you can take care of any problems or shaping earlier on in the process. So I would recommend starting at 200, then a 400, maybe, then 8, then 1500. I find that the 400, 800, and 1500 is a really, really nice starting point. You can go down to the 200 grit if you really do feel you need that really rough grit range to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But often if it's not for professional work, often you don't need to go down, just because the 400 does cut very fast. I think it cuts quite a lot faster than some more traditional synthetic stones that aren't diamond.
Gotcha.
So you could start there, but I think that would be for, if you're looking to actually reshape bevels,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's single bevel or a double bevel, or you want to resurface something. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would start around 400, 800, 1500.
Okay. And how about, have you been polishing with your NSK stones, or can you polish?
Oh, yeah.
And what kind of finish are we looking at? Like,
yeah, I do polish, because I'm going up to sometimes up to, like, I have this one, like, sometimes I go up to this 12K. And that would be always it's mainly for Onyaki most of the time. But yeah, I do a lot of polishing with them. I find when you're going into the higher grits for polishing, specifically, I find when you're going higher grits, it's in the NSK Hokuto range line. I find it's really nice to start going slightly softer.
Right.
For me, that is like,
Right.
that's just my preference and how I like it to feel. So I'll go like 1,500 Hocto 1, then Hocto 3, 2, and then Hocto 2, 3S, and then Hocto 2S, and kind of like that, and just kind of stay in the Hocto 2S area for polishing. Yeah. And that's usually with carbon steels and with stainless as well. It will work really well. So yeah, I do a lot of polishing.
Okay. Okay. Another question that's popped up is we've seen on Instagram NSK posting curved or convex stones. Have you had any experience with those?
I do, yes. It's not something we're feel confident to release yet, but I do use them. They are, I would say, a game changer for me personally.
Sure.
They, but it's really for very, very, very specific work.
Right.
And that is working on Ura of single bevel knives. But like to make a custom stone like that, I can show you one here.
Very cool. Yes.
Yeah. So making a custom stone like that is takes a lot of work, and it's really, really very, very, very specific what these stones are made for. So they are definitely not for everybody. They work extremely well when they are dialed in, and you get the right shape. If you can match the shape of the stone to the Ura, then it works extremely well. It's actually kind of it puts a big smile on my face when I get a single bevel knife and put it on that stone, and I can completely redo and reshape and Ura by hand,
right,
which is usually always done by large stone machine, right? So yeah, it's not something that we're really thinking about releasing unless there's a large demand for them, because they're fairly expensive to make. The research and the development of them is very time consuming. But yeah, whoever asked that question, yes, I'd like to release them, but
well, maybe in the future
it is something that is
see if there's
maybe in the
demand
future
for it. And yeah, I just want to go back to some conversations we had before. I know you spoke about the truthfulness of these stones, and how they cut differently. Do you want to just elaborate on that a bit more, and what that means to you?
I guess I think it's after from sharpening for so many years, testing so many different stones, you're always searching for something you're always searching for that perfect stone or that perfect progression. Maybe you'll never find it, but sometimes you do. And when you do, it's a kind of an incredible experience. So, and being able to actually use a stone where I can really truthfully say, because I also know the maker and I've seen how he goes about making them, I can honestly say that, yeah, okay, if that's 3,000, I know that's 3,000. There's no different grit in there. There's no different binder. It's all consistent for that.
So your entire surface is consistent all the way through, and basically you're saying you could feel confident with your working
and
surface.
It's also that when you're sharpening, you're always looking from stone to stone. You're always looking for the scratch the stone makes, and you want to see that, okay, I see an 800 grit, and now I'm going to go on to the 1,500. I want to clearly see what I'm doing. I want to clearly see that. I want to know that I'm moving on to the next stone, and I want to know that I have erased all the scratches from the previous lower grit stone. So these stones, yeah, they really do help in that area. They are very accurate for me, from my experience with them,
Right.
and from talking to other people too, like people that are using them for kana and doing competitions.
Mhm.
Their edges have got to be dialed in perfectly to get
Right.
the type of work they're doing, right? So yeah, they do. They offer a kind of like you kind of know, always know where you are.
Right. Another question just popped up here.
Yeah.
Is there a break-in period for these stones, for the surface of
Uh,
these stones, or do they come from the maker ready to go?
yeah, they're ready to go. I haven't experienced that. I know what the question is referring to, and I know I haven't experienced that. Sometimes, yes, you have to take off a bit of, from some synthetic stones, you got to take off a bit of the top,
Hmm.
maybe a half millimeter or so, sometimes more, depending on the maker of the stone or the type of stone. But these stones, no, you can get them, you can start using them immediately.
Very cool. Well, we're coming to the end here. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that you might want to touch on that we didn't ask about. I don't know. What do you got? I know we've had many discussions about the stones, and we've talked about the consistency of it, and that you have been experimenting and working closely with the maker. And I think that's kind of important. Maybe we could talk about
Yeah,
the
I think
curating this line versus just some of the other. If you know, if you were to just buy it randomly, that
yeah,
the
I guess
you
yeah,
know.
the stones that are in Tosha are the stones that I've picked and that I use
Mhm.
personally. So and as we keep on going forward, we're always introducing and will be introducing new stones or revised versions of stones, because we're always trying to perfect what we're doing. And
Mhm.
what I should also kind of say is that the maker is just one person making these stones. They are very technically above what I understand, but it is really one person making these, and that one person takes a lot of time and care to
Mhm.
make them. This is not a big factory. This is not. These are literally one person making each stone,
Right.
mixing them and testing them and tweaking little variations of them, and constantly making prototypes and then revising them and continually trying to get better and better and better.
Right.
So what we're offering right now is what I use personally every day,
Mhm.
and so anything else we do offer will have another specific reason, or there's a reason why we're offering it. There's a reason, or it's going to be for a specific type of sharpening or type of user. So
Right. Is
yeah,
there
it's yeah.
sorry, I was just going to ask, is there anything that you
Yeah.
can share with us that you've been working on, maybe just to show off to the camera, or is there anything handy? If not, that's
Um,
okay. We understand you're in your workspace and we don't want to disrupt you, but just thought I'd throw it out
yeah,
there.
I mean, like I said, like these Nagura are a really big deal for me,
Mhm.
and kind of what they do for the stones. It actually really gives some of the harder stones that sometimes are a little bit difficult to use for kitchen knives, but and also the softer stones, it gives a very nice feeling, almost like a natural stone feeling, with a really nice smooth slurry on it. So these are something that we're working on. Hopefully we'll release those soon,
Hmm.
and those are will be hopefully have grit for almost every stone.
Right.
Um,
But any blades you
we're
have
working,
handy to
yeah.
show off, like just kind of like anything, like, yeah, we just, is there anything around your own personal project, anything?
Well, there is something coming to Tosha very soon, but
Oh,
I
right.
can show
Right.
you guys. I think you guys alluded to it. It's something we've been working on for quite some time. But this is Honyaki, Tamahagani Honyaki that we've been working on for a couple of years right now. And this is not anywhere near done. This is at Komanagura stage. But yeah, this is a Hitatsura. I don't know if you guys can see it.
There we go. Yep, yep.
It's a Hitatsura Choji Hamon. So right now this is at Komanagura. So
it's beautiful.
So this is a new series and new blades that will be coming to Tosho. They're limited in production just because it takes time to make them, but they're not limited that there's only a certain amount made and then that's it. But
right.
We're really excited about that. It's something that I've always wanted to release, and always wanted to release something of this level.
Right, right. Oh, it looks like we got one more
really
question here.
Yeah.
Will there ever be a dual-sided? I can't pronounce this. Hakoto.
Yeah.
Stone release. Like a dual.
We want to. We're not focusing on it right now, but I can show you one.
Sure.
So it would be like this. So here we have a 1,500 and an 800 dual-sided stone. So we are thinking about it, thinking about which grit ranges would be best to put together. But yeah, we are working on it and have made many different prototypes, and I've tested a lot of them. And it's really great. It's handy actually for me when I'm taking my stones somewhere to do sharpening. That's a great thing. But it offers still the same amount of abrasive, so about 3 to 3.5 millimeters per side. So yeah, it's something that we've worked on, but we haven't released it yet. But we will, hopefully, maybe later this year.
Awesome, cool. Well, we got about 10 minutes to wrap this up. I mean, we can end it right now, unless there's anything else you want to kind of add to this. Anything else you just want to let people know about, or I feel like we've touched on quite a bit of things here.
Yeah, we touched on quite a bit. I think one thing about these stones is that they're very, very. I think once you start using them, you can really, really personalize your work for yourself. I think that's the main thing that I've taken away from using them, is that you can really dial in very minute details of your sharpening work, where before it wasn't. I don't feel like it could. Sometimes it can with the stone. That is, technique is a very different topic. But with the stone itself, I think that's for me though.
And you primarily use NSKs only now, right?
Yeah. Actually, I only use NSK and Japanese natural stones.
Awesome. Well, I guess we could wrap it up from there. I guess the one thing we're going to let everyone know is that we will be having another video drop maybe in the next week, and we're going to touch on some of these things again. This video will also drop back onto YouTube, so you can review it for anyone that's missed it or tuned in a bit late. For our current stock, I would suggest going to toshoknifearts.com and take a look and see what we have currently. And there's stones coming in all the time. And of course,
there's some stuff coming in, I think, very shortly. And like I said, these stones will be available too, that I was using to resurface the lower grade stones. They should be available in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. And I think if anyone has any other questions, they could also email us at info.
Yeah.
At toshoknifearts.com. I think we are good to wrap it up. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. Is there another question, or is there something popping up? Hang on one second. We might have one last question, Ivan.
Sure.
So while we're just hanging out, how's Japan right now?
Yeah.
What time is it over there?
It's about almost 10 o'clock. here. What time is it?
AM.
Yeah, 9:52.
Yeah.
AM, yeah, AM.
We're in the middle
Yeah,
of
it's
summer
nice
right now.
yeah, nice sunny day. It's about, I think today's going to be about 30, 35 degrees here in Kilton. So yeah, it's
Awesome.
already into summer.
Awesome. Oh, here we go. Okay, so just coming in here, what criticisms or feedback do you have about these stones, if any? Or are they just entirely perfect?
I would say that, yeah, I think from using them, I think like because there's such a large amount of them and there's so many different stones to choose from, I think that's the one thing that we want to try to dial it in more to make certain stones can cross over a larger area of, not that they can't now, but I mean, when you're polishing as opposed to just doing edge work, you start to see that, okay, yeah, maybe there's like, you can dial it in a little bit more. So I think for people that haven't used them before, it can be a little bit daunting. Like, what is Hocto 1 and 2? Why is there a 2S, right? You know, so why are there so many different variations? There's a reason for the variations, but until you start really getting into it, and definitely, I know the people that use them and that I've talked to, once they start to use them, they really see why there are so many variants. And also, I think, yeah, with some of the lower grit stones, with the 200, for me, it's really perfect. I think for other people's work, depending on what type of work they're doing, the 200 stone could be a lot harder, but then you're going to take away from cutting speed. So maybe releasing a couple different variations of a 200 stone would be something that I am actually working on right now.
Yep.
So, but those are really the only two kind of things criticism I have, even if that it really is criticism. I don't really have any problems with the performance of the stones. It's more just what I see is more beneficial to the public, to the people using them, outside of how I use them. Because
fair enough,
I'm really, I have very specific needs for sharpening.
Gotcha.
Everybody's needs are so different, so it's kind of addressing that, but trying to solve some of these kind of problems.
So we got one last question here. What range or line is best for beginners?
I think the Kyokoha is probably the best one. I think the Hocto, if you have sharpening screens already and you feel fairly confident in your technique on stones, then I would say, I think that probably the Hocto is probably a better place for you, a better starting point. But if you're really just looking for something to do edge work, you're not so much into repairs or resurfacing or reshaping, I think then Kyokoha is actually a much more approachable stone. It's very much just use it. It's very friendly. It's very nice feedback. It's not challenging, because sometimes the harder diamond stones can be challenging, and there's a learning curve and a technique adjustment that comes with that a lot of people may not understand. Okay, what do I do here? Okay, this stone feels so hard. Okay, I've got to adjust my technique, my pressure, and my stance. All these, how much water I'm using, how much I'm not using. So, I would say the Kyokoha is a better starting point.
Awesome. Well, great. Ivan, I want to thank you for joining us. I think everyone who's been watching probably got a lot of information from this. And I know there's probably a lot more info coming. And like you said, I have a feeling that it really needs to be in people's hands to try.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. Thanks for hanging out, man. Taking your morning.
Problem. Thank you, Ray. No problem, Ray.
Yeah, and I guess that would be it. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Take care.